we wanted to take a moment to encourage you to take the 10 essential skills to build stronger and healthier relationship course.
We've all heard it said that when you get to the end of your life, you're not looking back at the money that you made or the things that you had, but at the relationships that you had with your children, your family, your friends, and your coworkers. We hope you'll join us.
Yeah, we truly believe it is worth the effort.
My Inner Knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
Well, hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm a little on edge.
Yeah.
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 What do
There's
you?
a lot of work to try to get done before we leave town.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. I don't want to be working while we're traveling. But.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. A very minimal amount.
So,
if
yeah, just,
needed.
Struggling to get focused.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, how are you?
I'm okay. Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot to do before we go. So trying to, and it will all be just fine. Yeah. But wanting it to go well, the trip, for it to be smooth, right?
Yeah.
So, so what was on my mind this morning that I thought would be an interesting conversation?
You've been thinking.
I've been thinking. I've been thinking about what do we tell ourselves that creates safety for us in relationship? So I'm going to try to figure out how to say this as succinctly as possible. I believe sometimes that we feel safer in certain relationships. But I think that sometimes we might feel safer because we're actually performing. What I'm curious about is, I think in our intimate relationships, we can feel less safe. And I think sometimes we are, for sure. So it's not about that. But I think we can feel less safe in our relationships because maybe we aren't performing. What do you think? Or are you like, what are you talking about?
I don't know. The intimate relationships thing came in and there was a disconnect for me there.
Okay.
When you were like, hey, but we're probably not, but do we feel safer when we're not performing or vice versa? So you got to
try again.
Come in.
Okay.
Another direction here.
Okay. So how about to be more specific?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You have an agenda.
No.
I'm playing.
Okay.
You have an idea.
I do. I have an idea. So, for example, I think sometimes we might feel safer in our relationships at work. Maybe we have friends there that we feel like are safer because we don't either have a lot of negative interactions or even maybe not much interaction, but it's not contentious, so it feels safer. But oftentimes in those environments, there's a role that we're playing as opposed to showing those people at work all of ourselves. So is the safety that we may feel around other people real? Or is it really because they don't know who we are?
They know parts of us.
Parts of us, right?
Yeah.
And then we may have a harder time in our home feeling seen, loved, heard, understood. And that may be true. But could it be because at home we're playing less of a role and more of who we are without the role is showing, and that makes the people around us more uncomfortable. And so maybe there's more, maybe there's more tension or frustration in our more intimate relationships because there's less role playing.
Fascinating.
Just curious. What do you think?
What do you do? I beat you to it.
I want to know what you're thinking, and then I'll tell you.
I immediately want to test your hypothesis.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, what was going through my mind is for us to reveal more and to be in less of a role so that more of our parts are seen. Mm-hmm. Or more parts of us are seen. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? Different aspects of the truth about ourselves, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Don't we have to have a higher level of safety before we start to reveal those anyway? And that comes with intimate relationships sometimes.
I believe so.
Okay.
What I think about is, and I don't actually know the technical term or maybe the most accepted term in family therapy, but when I was younger in my career, we would call a certain phenomenon a flip-flop. And so something that was endearing about you when we were newer in relationship then becomes one of the most frustrating things. And so, and the reason that might be, most of the time, I'm not saying all the time, some people's behaviors can escalate into ways that are unhealthy and unsafe. But really the belief behind that was that we changed the value of that behavior. Like so you may have been, for example, like a jokester, right? Like, oh, he's so funny. And now it's like, ugh, he's so irritating. And so they would call that the flip-flop. Like your behavior may actually be the same, but I've decided that I don't like it anymore. And so what I'm looking at is really how do we value what's really happening in our relationship is what I'm talking about. And so, is there like a perceived safety that we have around people who don't know us and we think it's safer because it really isn't very challenging and they don't really know us because we're really playing a role, versus at home it's more uncomfortable and more stressful, but I'm not playing much of a role there. But I think being at home is harder. But maybe it's just because we're playing less of a role as opposed to it being less safe. So for me, what I'm coming at it is how do we value those things? I think we often don't look at things very deeply. It's more surface. And if we come up with a reason in our mind that seems to make sense, then that's true, but we may not test it out. So for me, it is about how are we valuing what's actually happening in our relationship? Are we being curious?
Well, I think it's easy to get in patterns with your intimate partner.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then so that can happen. And I think curiosity is the antidote to that.
Yeah.
Doing a podcast together is an antidote to that as well. But
it has been for us.
It has. No, I'm kind of, it seems like there's more than one issue going on, but coming back to the safety piece, there's a lot more of us out there at home than there is in other places. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know more about me than many other people ever will, even though you don't know it all, I'm sure. Right. And I feel safe enough, to be able to do that. But it's an interesting, it cuts both ways, I guess, is what I would say.
Tell me more.
When you are that vulnerable, it can feel unsafe, just because it can feel potentially dangerous. Like, as in, I could lose this relationship, especially if the pattern that you've had in the past or behavior, like you're saying, that used to be endearing to your partner, now just irritates your partner. And that, that's heartbreaking. Right. To contemplate something that they thought was so cute, or just a quirk in your personality that was fun, and now you're being judged by it. Now, all of a sudden, what felt safe doesn't feel safe anymore, depending on how the partner who's flip-flopped presents it, right? At the same time, I think we have to hold in mind that we're all changing. And so, to soften the blow of that, it just depends on how you're interacting, really. If you start treating me with disdain, because I don't know, I like to shake my booty at you, something like that. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's going to hurt my feelings if all of a sudden you're like, would you stop it?
Yeah, that won't happen.
But it can.
It could. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm fathoming your depths yet, but those are at least initial reactions to the topic. What are you thinking?
Sure. I think we are often disappointed relationally, because I do think that, I know that I have talked about this before on a different podcast episode, but I remember this client years ago talked about how the first 6 months of a relationship, someone only gets my representative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Surprise.
Right. Right. And I think that is common, because I do think it goes to the fear of abandonment, piece that we have. And so I need to play this role that I've been taught, or I need to play a role that I feel like society is telling me I have to play. I don't think many of us show up just being who we are. And I've seen reels out there where people, they're not being who they are, but they're playing like the opposite role, right? Because they're like, if I freak this person out at the beginning, then I don't want them to stay, right? So they're testing, right? So we can have different ways of testing. What I'm curious about is, can we practice being more authentic in all of our relationships so that we're more consistent no matter the setting? And I instantly think of, I'm not like talking about burping and farting at the office in front of everybody. I'm not talking about that.
That's not me.
I know. I know. But I do know. I do know other people other than you, right? So you were not who came to mind when I was thinking about that. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about again is, how do we value the people in our relationship, at the same time holding the lens in regards to, is this relationship that feels good real because they know who I am? Or does this relationship feel good because they don't know who I am? What are you thinking?
I think it would be best if every day, in every way, we could be our most authentic self.
Yes.
I don't know, however, that that's practical for the work setting, for example. You know, get in, work, and then if you want to socialize, go socialize.
Yeah. I don't think about it like that. I mean, I think I don't want the people in my office to perform, right?
Agreed.
Right. I mean, I want them to be who they are, and I want people to come in and do their work and go home. And so can't it be both? Can't we be who we are and still focus on work?
I think we can.
Okay. Tell me more.
Well, if you were just doing your thing, right, without putting on airs or speaking in a different voice, because I know people in the law business that use a different voice when they're on the job. And I'm like, are you kidding?
Right.
But they do. All of a sudden the radio comes out. I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I don't need that. But it's human. It's just human.
But performative. Because we feel like it is best that we play a role in this situation.
Let me ask you this. What's the difference between being performative and getting your work mind on? Putting on your work coat?
Oh, man. Okay, let me think.
Because I'm a very different person as a lawyer than I am when I'm not.
Yeah, but you've been working on those being more congruent.
Oh, I have. I'm a much nicer lawyer than I used to be.
Yeah.
But I'm still different. And it's just because of what I do.
Right. And the role that you feel like you need to play in those situations.
Yeah. I think I'm just trying to analyze as we go, but I think if we look at that transformation for me, and it's not complete, I don't know that it ever would be complete, but I think I'm a strong person, but I don't think that my nature is combative. I can be aggressive in certain circumstances and do the warrior, all those things. I can be that when it's needed, but I used to think it was needed all the time.
Yeah.
And my experience in changing that role or the degree of that role has been a positive experience. I think that it's less stressful to work with opposing attorneys. And I can still hold boundaries though, because it's critical with what I do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's just a different degree, I think, a different way of approaching it. I can still have a boundary and not be an ass.
Right.
Right. Just sorry, I'm not doing that.
Right.
Versus F you.
Right. Right.
Or I will not compromise on anything.
Right.
And also it just, when you bring your own energy, whatever your nature may be, I just think the universe is more able to allow things to flow to you than when you have a role that carries an energy that is not congruent with your essence. And I struggle with my essence and being a trial lawyer. But the more congruent that has become, the more success I've had with settlement amounts, jury verdicts, being able to walk through each day without despising everything I do.
Yeah.
Or what everybody else does too.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think about when I was young and I stepped into the corporate world young. When I was 18, I got, a job at a law firm. I was going to be a lawyer. Our offices were on the top floor of the tallest building in Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 18, I was big time. Right?
Oh, yeah. I would have thought I was big time too.
And what I know is that in order to have done that, because that was not a part of my upbringing at all, right? Like that, it was, so unfamiliar to me.
Right.
That I was playing a role, right? And I mean, I can clearly remember like even getting ready for work and looking at myself in the mirror and asking myself to some degree, like, do you fit the role? Right?
Okay.
Is this, is how you're dressed, does it fit the role? Your hair, does it fit the role? How you answer the phone, does it fit the role? How you engage with clients, does it fit the role? Like I was very intentional about making sure I fit what I perceived the role to be. And I think in most regards, I was successful. But I think looking back, it was mostly performative. I don't know that there were many interactions that I had that were really me. I think there was a lot of fear that was behind all of that. There wasn't freedom. Who I was at my core wasn't safe or enough. So I was pretending. Because that felt safer. And so I think about years ago, gosh, I don't even know how long ago, I had a client that came in to a session and he was new and he said, your website's really deceptive. Who it looks like you are isn't who you are. And ultimately, he meant it as a compliment, but it was the first awareness that I had that who I was and what I presented was incongruent. And that really started me in another level of trying to find congruence in myself. And so I went through a process, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but soul purpose, something. Anyway, it was a really interesting process where it helped me get really clear about who I was putting myself out there to be as a clinician. And it was much more resonant of who I was, that website. But there was also fear that I had to post it. Like, if I put out something that is truly reflective of who I am, then how will that impact my business? And I remember it being hard. And I also remember, for it to be live, right? And eventually that resonance came, right? Like who I am and who that mirrors back to me, like those are the same. Does that make sense? But I even remember somebody that I was working with in marketing that was like, well, you're going to lose clients if you put yourself out there like that.
Guess who was right?
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so
Fascinating.
So I think the performative, piece is an expectation that we have. And so in relationship, whatever level of relationship, again, what I'm trying to do by having this conversation is raise our awareness of it so that we can ask ourselves, when am I pretending? When do I feel that I can be myself? Is there any place that I feel like I can be myself? Right?
Do I know who myself is?
Do I know who myself is? Right? And if there are places that I feel like I actually can be myself, then what is the health of my relationships in those situations?
Okay.
Right? And then again, it just increasing our awareness of these ways that we get into relationship and defining ourselves and others in relationship that may be true or not true. I think about, Mandy, when I go to class, like yoga class with her, I just smile like the whole time because I really feel like Mandy just shows up as Mandy. And it's one of the things that I just love about being in the class is because as the guide, there is congruence. And so for me, it's even what I recognize is even easier for my body.
Sure.
Right? Because the energy, if we want to go to an energy perspective, the energy from the guide is congruent.
Right.
My body doesn't have to try to figure out Mandy's energy, right? Because it's just congruent.
Right. Yeah. I think it's similar to what I was saying. I think it's important. I think it's also important to recognize that we will try on different roles for ourselves to define who we really are, right?
Absolutely.
And leaving space for that as well, instead of saying, well, I'm a faker or whatever it is just recognizing that change occurs, hopefully, throughout our lives, that we're being curious. And I think then being congruent or trying to be congruent with whatever you're trying out is really important.
Yeah, agreed.
And it was just what came to mind back to me was, I told you the other day, for years, I didn't wear a suit to depositions.
Right.
I wasn't going to show that level of respect
Right.
to opposing counsel or their witnesses.
Right.
And I might dress up a little bit for my own clients, or even wear a suit for them. And I just recently decided I am wearing a suit and a tie to all of those interactions, unless we're traveling, across the country, and then I might show up in a button-down shirt. But that's a change in role, and it's very intentional.
Right. So tell us about that.
Everything that's going on in our country.
Yeah.
To me, that there's a lack of civility. And I think bringing back that, even dress, that level of professionalism is a good message to me to stay professional. I'm not going to go down into the depths. That doesn't mean I'm soft.
Right.
But I don't have to be savage about it.
Right.
Right. And sends a message also to them and whoever the witness might be. I think it's, it's fascinating, and maybe it's old school, a return to old school. Because when I started 30 years ago, my God, it's almost been 30 years. I wore a coat and a tie every day.
Yeah.
Every day, sometimes 3-piece suit.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think about what's the difference between I'm expected to do this and something that really is resonant with how I want to walk in the world. Right. And the suit is what it sounds like. is the suit is your reminder of how you want to walk in the world, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, how I'll say before I testify in a hearing or something, I will repeat the 4 agreements to myself before I go in the courtroom.
Right.
Right. That is like my suit for me, right? It's like, this is how you want to walk in the world. Remember these 4 things.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Is like that? That's what you're talking about?
It is like that. And it's fascinating since we do the t-shirts for my inner knowing about choosing your intention for the day.
Yes.
But I guess it's not a whole lot different than that, but it's bigger to me. Also just respect for the rule of law.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back to, well, how are we going to behave with each other as lawyers and with other people so that people who are outside the profession, when they see it, they can see it, maybe start seeing it differently.
Right. It would be nice if the role of, no, that's not what how we perceived attorneys became respectful again, as opposed to how a lot of people see attorneys.
And the court system is under attack.
Right. Right.
And I think, we all as attorneys bear some responsibility for that.
Absolutely.
Because people used to wear suits in the 80s.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of lawyer jokes when I came out of school. I guess I was in the 90s, that sort of thing. And so there's still that perception, and there always will be. But I think the way we carry ourselves and comport ourselves with each other is a way. That's my way of trying to come back around to respect for that system. I have to respect it myself before anybody else will.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And act with integrity in dress, in manner, in deed.
Yeah. Oh, I like it.
Yeah, me too.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about the clothing piece. I think about someone in our office years ago who, would come in, essentially like they had just rolled out of bed.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm casual at the office. I wear jeans most days. But there is effort that I put into getting ready in the morning. I don't just grab what's laying on the floor. I don't go to work in what I slept in. There is effort, even if I am dressed casually. And for me, there is this place that I feel like I'm still in, where I don't really know how I want to present, because I do feel like there's still a part of me that's like, I should dress up just like I did every day when I was at the law firm or the accounting firm. And then there's a part of me that's like, but that's not me. I like doing it. When I do, like, Megan's wedding, that was nice, or speaking at an engagement, like that was nice. But I don't think that's who I am every day. And there is effort that I put into it. And so that energy is congruent.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you thinking?
Just I was thinking back as a young attorney, and we double-breasted suits. Those were my favorite.
Oh yeah.
You remember? It was
a
long time ago. But in any event, I liked it. It was a role that I liked. It was important to me to be seen that particular way. And now it's different. And I like that a lot better. I think it's more congruent. That was something that I think, or I thought was expected back then, et cetera. But this is for me because it's not expected.
Yeah.
by anybody else. But I do think that it's a statement that I want to make. That's my choice. And so I feel the congruence between the two. It doesn't mean that I sit around in a suit when I'm just at my office.
Yeah.
But in any event, I think the intentionality is a really important component of how we're going to proceed with revealing ourselves to others, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. What else are you thinking?
Oh, just going back to, I got us off track a little bit, I guess, but back to the intimate relations piece and whether we feel less safe when we're not stepping into some role.
Yeah, and that specifically is, are we lying to ourselves? Right? I mean, really, so when I say how we're valuing the story, and again, sometimes we do feel less safe. So I'm not talking about those times. I'm talking about we are human. We are going to struggle. We are going to have conflict. Life is going to happen. And what do we tell ourselves about those things? And the people that are with us during those things. We can often lie to ourselves about whether we feel safe. I'm just not safe. And it's like, is it not safe or is it uncomfortable?
Uncomfortable to be who we are. Is that what you're saying?
To be who we are or to be seen. Like we can want to be seen and at the same time not want to be seen. That's what I mean.
Sure.
Right? Like I want you to tell me the truth. I don't want you to tell me the truth. Right?
We're so complex.
Right. I want you to be, I'm trying to think of something else. I want you to be more playful with me. Why are you doing that? Right? So does that make sense? So to me, it's like we can be lying to ourselves about what we want and what is that for us? Are we even thinking about it? How are we valuing it? We're asking this person for something which we think is going to make us feel safe and then it doesn't make us feel safe. And then again, to me, it's about awareness. All of it's about increasing our awareness of who we are in a role. Are we playing a role right now? Sometimes we can act like we're not playing a role, but we're still playing a role. Very complex. And so I just know that these are not things we typically talk about. So that's why it was on my mind, was for us to consider ourselves in these different roles. And then again, how is safety ultimately connected to it for us? Because again, I think we can feel safe in relationships that are not our intimate relationships, but it's because that person doesn't really know us. I don't know if I talked about this on a podcast or not. So, a long time ago, I was at a retreat and some guy was hitting on me and was very direct about wanting to have an affair. And I, I'm sorry. I just think that it's amusing. And so I said, "Oh, so you really want to get to know me?" And he's like, "Yes, I want to get to know you." And I was like, "Well, then let's start with my 4 cesarean sections."
Nice.
And he's like, "Yeah, I don't want to hear about that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, you don't actually want to get to know me." And I did on purpose, right? I mean, I was teaching, right?
I don't think I've ever heard that one.
You haven't?
No. I've heard others, but not that one.
Not that
That's
one.
hilarious.
And so, no, he wanted really just a role, right? And so he may have felt safe in the role he was in. He may have felt safe in the role. Me felt safe with me in the role I was in, right? But it's not real, but we think it's real. We can value that feeling of safety and connection as real and it not be real at all. Mm-hmm. So again, for me, it's all about how are we valuing things? Are we even aware whether we're in a role or not in a role? Do we experiment with not being in a role? And what does that look like? You know, with the people around us that we're in intimate relationship with, whether it's our partner or children or parents or siblings, our friends, would they be okay if we weren't playing a role? I don't know. Just things I'm thinking about. Mm-hmm. What are you thinking?
Life's a mystery. That's what I'm thinking.
It's really complex.
It is. Well, I'm thinking about your young self, you, back at the big law firm on the 40th floor or whatever it was.
It was the 40th floor. Yeah.
See, I even know.
I think there's 41 floors now, but there was 40 back then.
Yeah. How would you act differently today if you weren't playing that role, but you were that age again in that law firm?
If I wasn't playing a role,
how would you have changed?
That is a really good question.
Or would you have? I mean, you would say, well, it wouldn't have worked. I don't know. It's the interesting part.
Yeah. That is a really good question. I don't know if I know I could be myself now in that environment. I don't know how it would be perceived.
Right.
For sure. What people would decide about who I am now in that environment. Yeah. I would guess that if the people that I worked with back then heard me now, 35 years later, that would probably be surprising to them to some degree, you know. Maybe not everybody that worked there. There could have been some people that saw past my performative to me, right? But I think for other people, they'd be like, holy cow, like that is a very different person than the role she was playing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was more who I was in high school. I don't think I really cared so much about high school, and so I don't know that I played as much of a role. But I guess we'd have to ask the people I went to high school with, who maybe haven't had much contact with me in over 35 years. Yeah. I just think I was kind of doing my own thing and I wasn't really thinking about it. But I knew as soon as I stepped into that office building that I had to play a role. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I would get tired too of playing a role. I mean, I think about like the ending, when I left that first law firm. I was like 22. I think I'd been there 4 years. I think I had started like getting tired of the role, but then I think I stepped right into another role.
Yes, we did.
And then got tired of that role. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that went on for a bit. I would just shift into a different but similar role. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm and I know we're getting close to time, but as you look over the span of your life, we are certainly, I think, trying a lot more roles on when we're younger.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we should become static. I don't think that's good either. But I also think, hopefully, as we become more introspective and do our work, that we start to develop a core understanding of this. This is, these are parts of me that are not unchangeable, but known, more static. So we're more comfortable in our skin, I guess.
Yeah.
It seems easier to me now to be who I want to be, who I am, than it did when I was younger.
Sure. When you were saying that, I was imagining myself settling into a contemplative place. Like, let's say before I went out to an event, and I was trying to imagine myself, like, do I feel congruent?
Mm-hmm.
Do I feel like how I am presenting myself physically, emotionally, mentally, do those feel congruent? Or do I feel like I'm playing a role, or that I have to play a role? And if I don't play a role, what's the fear? And so I'm just imagining myself having that short conversation with myself. And it's not about not ever playing a role. It's just, do I even know when I am?
That's exactly what was coming to mind.
Yeah.
Is the intention.
Right.
I am choosing.
This.
Yes. So,
Right.
So we're not just on autopilot.
Right.
But you've chosen.
Right.
Big difference.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I like it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Babe. Yeah. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Hang in there.
Yeah.
We're all still figuring it out. I do think that you get more of a sense of self, hopefully, but I don't want to be the same person always.
No.
I do want to develop a sense of myself, though, some core beliefs, but I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
Even at 56.
Absolutely.
And that's okay too. But the intentional part is really the biggest difference for me at this point in my life. And I think it could have been a lot earlier.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to do this, and these are the reasons why. Okay. And maybe in certain circumstances, like the law firm, you would still need. But you still might do some things differently.
Oh, for sure.
As would I.
There are plenty of things I would do differently.
Yeah. Anyway, that's, I think, flexibility and grace for ourselves.
Yeah.
But also the recognition that doing your work will give you that sense of self, and then you can make decisions about how much you'll share, or what role you're going to play in what situations.
Yeah.
And will you adjust it as you go through that day in that situation, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Just continuing to increase our awareness of ourself in different situations. And again, that's what this talk was all about, was, can I pay more attention to myself in different interactions so that I'm learning more about what I'm doing and why am I doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think the intentional part, if I'm living intentionally, that brings a level of congruence with my presentation, right?
Yeah.
And it may not be all of who I am at all, because my casual self will be different than it is in the business world or in the courtroom.
Yeah.
But you still, by making the choice and having contemplated it, you create congruence, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, I agree.
Am I on track?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The intentionality. Right. And again, it's funny because when you said that, I was thinking of a very extreme example of someone saying, okay, I'm going to step into this role and it is crazy and I'm doing it anyway, is still going to be more congruent than if I'm doing it on autopilot. right?
Why does she act that way? Right? Why do I act that way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. Always interesting.
Always learning.
Always so much growth, opportunities every day in our life. Yeah. Thanks for the conversation,
Yeah.
babe.
Thank you. Love you.
I love you too. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.